South America. The New World, Terra Incognita. A wedge-shaped landmass separating two great oceans, the Atlantic and the Pacific. What would it be like to cross this continent along the Tropic of Capricorn? What landscapes would we encounter? Paranaguá, on the Atlantic coast of South America, is a bay with an important port and one of the oldest cities in Brazil. In 1653, this bay was already on the map, the place where gold was first discovered in Brazil, then a territory of Portugal. Today, Paranaguá is famous for being Latin America's largest export hub of grain, mainly produced in the state of Paraná and in Paraguay. On the other side of South America, Antofagasta, on the Pacific coast, is an important Chilean port city known as the Pearl of the North. Since 1866, the city and port have been linked to the export of locally mined ores, mainly copper and saltpeter. Situated on the edge of the Atacama Desert, today the region is developing its nature tourism and geotourism. This is a journey of about 3,000 kilometers between Paranaguá and Antofagasta, broadly following the Tropic of Capricorn. A South American journey of knowledge and rediscovery. A cross-section of this continent, crossing Brazil, Paraguay, Argentina and Chile, reveals a fantastic and inspiring geology. It reveals a dynamic planet, a rich history spanning the last 2 billion years. It's a journey of spectacular beauty, unforgettable experiences, and an awe-inspiring geography. The route has been an axis of tourism in several parts. Tourists and travellers often venture without knowing just how dynamic this landscape is. So, let's cross this new world and get to know the wonderful landscapes and nature between these two great oceans. How did the Atlantic Ocean come about? Our planet is always in transformation, and its outer surface is made up of tectonic plates, massive sheets of rigid rock that are drifting, floating on a viscous molten rock. These plates are always in motion, and over time, oceans disappear and continents rise. The Atlantic Ocean was born of a breakup of a supercontinent called Gondwana, the southern part of Pangaea, over the past 200 million years. One of the blocks that resulted is South America, which has been breaking away from Africa ever since, today with a speed of 2 to 3 centimetres every year, similar to the growth speed of our fingernails. On the Atlantic shore of the continent, the rocks are ancient, metamorphic and igneous, often more than 2 billion years old. They have witnessed half the history of the Earth.
O nível do mar ele depende da temperatura da Terra, das glaciações. Há 10 mil anos atrás, o mar estava a 120 metros abaixo do que está hoje. O mar estava a 180 quilômetros a leste daqui. Aqui era tudo terra, montanhas e florestas assim por diante.
On our route, we cross Brazil through the state of Paraná. The geography of this part of the country is divided into a coastal plain, a mountain range less than 2,000 metres in altitude, and 3 plateaux forming different landscapes. The Cerro do Mar is a barrier of granite mountains that separates the coast from the interior, forming the highest altitudes of the Paraná territory. It is covered by Atlantic forest, the last remnant of this type of vegetation in Paraná. The metamorphic rocks of the coastal plain, the igneous of the Cerro do Mar, and the metamorphic rocks of the Curitiba Plateau are part of the shield or base. These are Precambrian rocks, more than 541 million years old, and the oldest we encounter on our journey. On this base, newer sedimentary rocks were deposited, forming a basin. All these rock formations in Paraná are eventually cut by a dark rock. These are the diabase dikes, fractures that occurred in the separation of continents that were later filled by basaltic magma. As we move west, the rocks become younger, revealing the continent's most recent geological history. Rocks from the Paraná sedimentary basin predominate on the Ponta Grossa plateau. This is an important geological structure also formed in Pangaea, which today is an exposed area of 1 million square kilometres, covering southern Brazil, Paraguay, Argentina and Uruguay. The Ponta Grossa plateau is separated from the basement by the Devonian escarpment, which is formed by sandstone of marine origin.
Nós passamos pela região litorânea, Serra do Mar e chegamos ao primeiro planalto. Nos deslocando para o oeste, nós vamos nos encontrar com esta bela escarpa que separa o primeiro do segundo planalto, que separa as rochas mais antigas do estado do Paraná, principalmente proterozoicas, das rochas da bacia do Paraná. Sustentando o relevo, nós temos os arenitos da formação Furnas, que são rochas que foram depositadas durante o período devoniano e por isso essa estrutura de relevo se chama escarpa devoniana. Nós temos aqui condições de perceber um contraste muito nítido do relevo e é um dos marcos regionais dessa nossa viagem ao longo da América do Sul, mostrando essas diferenças no relevo que são sustentadas pelos tipos diferentes de rochas.
But the sedimentary rocks of the region have varied origins, also with glacial, lake and terrestrial influences, with a rich fossil record. Trilobites, starfish and shells, aquatic reptiles, and petrified tree trunks, for example, are found in the various sedimentary rocks of this second Paraná plateau. A must-see attraction is the Via Velha State Park, which features weather-patterned sandstone forming surreal rock formations, such as a chalice, which is one of the symbols of Paraná, and others. This region is full of natural beauty, with caves, canyons and waterfalls of crystal clear water. Continuing our journey westwards, another escarpment, the Escarpa de Boa Esperança, or Cerro do Cadeado, is a step from the second to the third plateau, the Guarapuava Plateau. It is an immense remaining surface that was covered by volcanic spills from fissures when the continent separated. Basaltic rock predominates over this plateau, with nothing more than the cooled lavas of 130 million years ago. On this plateau, in Coronel Vivida, it is possible to visit a crater resulting from the impact of a meteor of about 100 meters in diameter that collided with the Earth's surface about 115 million years ago. The crater is 9 kilometers in diameter. Despite being covered in vegetation, it is still recognizable today by the relief of the surface, and evidence of the impact can still be found on the rocks. The largest geological monument of Paraná embedded in these basaltic spills are the spectacular Iguaçu Falls, one of the 7 wonders of the modern world and designated by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site. A huge volume of water collected by the Iguaçu River, which rises in Curitiba near the Serra do Mar, comes to form at its mouth a fabulous arrangement of waterfalls on different basalt spills in several steps. Álvar Nunes Cabeça de Vaca was the first European to reach the falls in 1542, which were already known to the Guarani Indians. In some of these basaltic spills, gas bubbles formed that became trapped in the lava and over time crystallized as violet quartz. These are the amethyst geodes. Some of these bubbles may be 1 or 2 meters in diameter, as in the Wunder amethyst mines in Argentina. The city of Foz do Iguaçu is the last frontier of Brazil. In fact, a triple frontier, since it borders Paraguay and Argentina. It was in this region of America that the most significant Jesuit missions developed in the 17th and 18th centuries. The remaining ruins of these missions form an important archaeological heritage, found in all 3 countries and built in the Baroque style, with imposing sandstone masonry. This sandstone indicates that at the time of the dinosaurs, this area was a huge desert. Its layers are below the basalts, but surface in the mission region and constitute an important groundwater reservoir, known as the Guarani Aquifer System. It is one of the largest volumes of quality groundwater on the planet. Heading west, the Chaco region emerges. It offers a similar vista to the Pantanal in Brazil, a huge fluvial and lake plain that extends to the Andes. These regions, generally less than 100 meters above sea level and humid, are one of the most outstanding ecosystems in South America. An area that takes in much of Paraguay, northern Argentina, the Midwest of Brazil, and even the south of Bolivia. Lakes such as the Ipacaraí in Paraguay, the wetlands of Pilcomayo River, and the Bermeja River, or the Esteros del Ibera, are characteristic features of this alluvial plain, filled with sediments from the erosion of the Andes. Large rivers, such as the Paraguay River, drain this region. In the Chaco lies one of the most famous and abundant meteorite fields in the world, Campo del Cielo. The fragmentation of 1 or more meteoroids entering the atmosphere about 5,800 years ago created a meteor shower and a profusion of impact craters in this region. Most of the meteorites here are metallic, like the core of our planet, and some are among the largest in the world. In the southern part of the Chaco, the climate is semi-arid, and this region has the highest temperatures on the continent, such as the 48.9 degrees Celsius recorded in the Riva de Via. Having travelled more than 800 kilometres in a straight line, finally the transition from the immense Chaco Plain to the colossal Andes Mountains begins in the Salta region, with the sub-Andean ranges. These are modest mountains between 1,500 and 2,500 metres above sea level, but high enough to hold the moist air from the Amazon and the Pantanal, which causes a microclimate of abundant rainfall with tropical jungle vegetation called Yungas. This eastern bank of the Andes has tectonic features characteristic of compressive forces, with the formation of folds and several valleys between the faults, such as the valleys of Lerma, where the city of Salta is located, or the Calchaquías valleys, where excellent grapes are grown for the region's fine wines. To the west, these valleys are limited by the eastern Cordillera, with blocks of mountains 5,000 to 6,000 metres that delimit valleys and ravines and very intense erosion. Characteristic here are the quebradas, long gorges carved in the valleys, with sediments transported by melting ice that descended with great intensity and formed thick layers of conglomerates. The cities of Purmamarca, Tilcara and Humahuaca in the Rio Grande Valley are surrounded by splendid colourful mountains such as Paleta del Pinto or Cerro del Siete Colores. These mountains were formed by the accumulation of coloured clays of different ages and bear witness to the intense weathering that occurred. Metamorphic rocks are present, betraying the enormous seismic pressures that have broken this material and left many flaws. The climb from Purmamarca towards the highlands gives a good idea of the strength of these processes and the formation of a unique topography. An ascent of 2,000 metres in just 17 kilometres in a breathtaking setting. The Puna region, or Altiplano, is a zone embedded between two mountain ranges, which was pushed up, forming a basin on average about 4,000 metres above sea level, similar to the plateau of Tibet in the Himalayas. Tectonically, it is a region of broken blocks of Paleozoic age, which sank or rose. It is an area of many salt flats and salt ponds, formed by the confluence of waters on the blocks that sank. These deposits now concentrate tons of salts, rich in rare elements such as lithium, potassium, magnesium, and rare earth elements.
Ao contrário do que se pensa, muitos salares aqui dos Andes, eles não se formaram a partir de um mar que secou. Esse salar aqui de Salinas Grandes está a cerca de 3.400 metros de altitude, e a sua formação é bem mais recente do que a formação dos Andes. Então todo esse sal é proveniente provavelmente de uma influência vulcânica aqui na região, e a lavagem dos sais das rochas e a concentração nessa bacia. Ele é alimentado por águas das chuvas das montanhas, e por comunicação subterrânea ele tem essa flutuação de nível.
The living conditions in the highlands are quite hostile and can pose a challenge for travellers, with altitude sickness, low oxygen, high exposure to ultraviolet rays, and very low humidity in the air. Very strong winds provide an additional challenge for cyclists. In the volcanic mountain range is the border between Argentina, Chile and Bolivia. It is a side-by-side alignment of stratum volcanoes which easily exceed 5,000 or 6,000 metres in altitude. This is perhaps the most emblematic part of the Andes, as this mountain range of volcanoes is far from the coast and is the result of melting of the Nazca Plate. This plate sinks under the South American plate at an angle of 30 degrees, which produces the magma that reaches the surface here. It's one of the most intriguing processes on our planet. The landscape is formed by conical elevations, some still smoking, and numerous features linked to volcanic processes are to be found, such as pumps and ignimbrites, geysers and fumaroles. Ignimbrites are the rocks formed by the cooling of the material generated in pyroclastic flows, those deadly clouds that descend volcanoes at great speed. The geyser field of El Tatio, located at an altitude of 4,000 metres, presents a unique geothermal spectacle, a manifestation of mineralisation processes. It's a place to witness the stunning beauty and the frightening power of nature. Known as the Atacama Desert, this is an immense relief depression, a plateau that extends for more than 100,000 square kilometres, with an average altitude of 2,300 metres, with a very arid, exceptionally dry climate. Sand, volcanic rocks and salt cover most of this area with very little vegetation, but its most striking characteristic is that in this place it never rains. In its centre was formed lagoons and salt pans fed by groundwater flows that originated in the mountains. Here, a highly specialised fauna has adapted to the hostile conditions. The Atacama Salt Pan is the third largest in the world, stretching 100 kilometres in length and 80 kilometres wide. In some parts of the salt pan, brines are made for the production of lithium, a vital element in the manufacture of smartphones, batteries and electronics in general. The main village in this desert is San Pedro de Atacama, a verdant oasis with a year-round water supply. Atacama is also one of the main destinations for scientific tourism in the world. In addition to the scenic and geological attractions, this site, at high altitude and without clouds, has a privileged position for astronomy, as indicated by the facilities of the ALMA project, about 30 kilometres from San Pedro, one of the most important complexes in the scientific world. In the city, it is worth visiting the Meteorite Museum, with a rich collection and lots of information, and the Archaeological Museum Gustave Lepage, which preserves more than 300,000 archaeological pieces, among them ceramics, lithic artefacts, fabrics, and even some mummified Atacameñas. To continue our journey across the continent of South America, we must cross the Domeco mountain range, which separates the Atacama Depression from the Central Depression. Although the entire region is known as the desert region of Atacama, the Central Depression is considered to be hyperdesert, more arid and dry, and especially conducive to evaporite mineralization. This area in the vicinity of the city of Calama is rich in copper and saltpeter, and its extraction accounts for much of the national economy. The famous Chuquicamata copper mine is Chile's largest, and the second largest open pit mine in the world. First exploited almost 100 years ago, it is now 4 kilometres long, 3 kilometres wide, and almost 1,000 metres deep. This one mine alone accounts for 1/3 of Chile's national GDP. Copper was already manufactured by pre-Columbian people 3,000 years ago in South America, and here it is obtained from plutonic igneous rocks in deposits known as copper porphyry. In 1899, mining work revealed mummified remains in excellent condition, covered with copper oxides. The Copper Man, as he became known, lived around 1,500 years ago and is on display at the Museum of Natural History in New York. Also in this region are famous and important nitrate deposits known as saltpeter. In 1879, the production of saltpeter was the cause of the Pacific War between Chile, Bolivia, and Peru. Saltpeter occurs in thin crusts on the surface of the desert and was indispensable in the manufacture of fertilizers and gunpowder. The economic cycle lasted until 1930, when exports plummeted after the emergence of synthetic saltpeter, and due to the economic depression of the 1930s. Saltpeter mining in Atacama has left an interesting archaeological heritage throughout the region, with ruins of ghost towns, abandoned saltpeter workshops, and impressive historical wealth. The Coast Cordillera is a mountain range of 2,500 metres in altitude, lower than the other Andes mountains and with an older geological origin. It extends parallel to the coast for more than 3,000 kilometres and is about 50 kilometres wide. This is the last barrier before the Pacific Ocean. Near Antofagasta, these mountains are very close to the sea, forming cliffs in places. From the city, this is the main view to the interior of the continent. Finally, we reach the end of our journey, the coastline of the Pacific Ocean, in the city of Antofagasta. The meeting of the South American tectonic plate with Nazca Plate, one of the most geologically fascinating places on Earth, the very origin of the immense mountain ranges we traverse. Antofagasta's iconic image is the Monument of La Portada, a natural arch eroded from the cliffs just north of the city, supported by a layer of sediment that was cemented by bird droppings or guano. Beneath these waters lies one of the great ocean trenches of the planet. About 8,000 metres deep, the fossa is just a few kilometres from the beach and is the result of the dive of the Nazca Plate below the continent, carrying with it sediments and water that will form the magma of the volcanoes of the Andes. If we were to drain away the ocean, the distance between the bottom of the trench and the top of the Andean mountains would be more than 14 kilometres, the greatest difference in relief on our planet. This geological history of the South American continent is fascinating. It makes us small in the face of the magnitude of nature and the dynamics of our planet. What a journey! A journey rich in geological and geographical insight, geotourism if you will, the best a traveller can experience anywhere in the world. To witness these landscapes, and the culture of the people who have adapted to this extraordinary geological is to understand our planet and our history.